A story just came across my desk about a BC family who was evicted from the home that they were renting and awarded over $27,000 to be paid by the buyer of the property that was being sold in which they were renting. This is a significant step in protecting renters in British Columbia and a story of caution to anybody looking to either buy or sell a home in the province of BC. Join me on this video where we're going to review the article together and talk about what went wrong and how it probably should have gone. So this BC family didn't have to move and this buyer did not find themselves with a massive bill. Hey, it's Darren with the Germyn Group, a real estate team that buys and sells homes for our incredible clients in the area of Surrey, BC and surrounding areas. If you enjoy this video, help us help other people find our channel and get some of the great content we're producing on a regular basis simply by liking and subscribing to the channel. It's one of the few ways for you to let us know that you appreciate the content and say thank you. And hey, look, we appreciate you too. So I see this absolutely all the time in my practice where a would-be home buyer wants to remove somebody that's renting out maybe a condominium townhouse, doesn't matter, in Surrey or really anywhere in Surrey or surrounding areas, because that tenant isn't paying enough in rent. The problem is they don't have an intention of moving in themselves, which is the legal way that they're allowed to ask that tenant to leave and to occupy the property. They simply ask them to leave to put a new tenant in place and really to get them to pay more money in rent. And this is a huge no-no. So much to the fact that the BC government or the Residential Tenancy Board did something about it many years back. There is really only two reasons how you can remove a tenant in the province of British Columbia. The first one is owner occupancy. You as an owner of a property have a right to occupy it, and you can give the tenant notice that you're going to do so. This of course also applies to anybody buying a property. In good faith, if they're planning on occupying the space, the tenant can be asked to leave. The other way of getting a tenant to leave a property is really only for significant renovations, so much so that it would not be reasonable to consider someone living in that space while it was being renovated. We're talking big project here. There is no other way to remove a tenant. And if you're someone who has rented properties out in the past and you think, well, that's an easy solution, let's just do a fixed term tenancy agreement, those don't really exist anymore. What I mean by that is if you sign a 1-year fixed term tenancy for a tenant, they do not have to move out at the end of that year. That tenancy continues on a month-to-month basis if the tenant chooses that they want to stay. This is to prevent people from being displaced because market rents are getting a little bit out of hand. For a little more on all of this, make sure you check out the video that we did here for tenants and this one here for landlords. It's stuff I wish they all knew before they got involved in either renting or renting out a property. Anyways, let's dive into this article because this BC family was evicted from their home and they got a judgment from the BC Residential Tenancy Board that was highly in their favor. Let's dive into it. So the headline, basically, family evicted from townhouse awarded $27.7 thousand to be paid by the buyer after the sale falls through. A tenant resource center says ending a tenancy is a drastic step that should not be taken lightly. A family of four in Surrey, BC was recently awarded $27,717 from the residential tenancy branch after they were evicted in April of 2022, when the townhouse they were renting was sold in a deal that was never completed. Interesting thing about what was happening in April of 2022, well, that was basically the absolute peak of the market. So that's when properties were at their absolute most expensive. And if they were given notice to vacate the property at that time, the buyer, well, maybe they didn't complete because values started dropping very quickly around that time. So maybe they couldn't even get a mortgage on the property that they wanted to buy. And maybe that's what happened. But anyways, let's go on. The would-be purchaser was ordered to pay a compensation of 12 months rent, the customary penalty for wrongful eviction. 12 months rent, that is a humongous number and one that I want you to keep in mind in case you're thinking of doing something shady with a tenant. It's just not worth it. 12 months of rent is a huge number. So they had to pay 12 months rent, the customary penalty for a wrongful wrongful eviction, even though they weren't able to complete the subject-free sale, problems with going subject-free, because their financing didn't come through. They also lost a $30,000 deposit. Holy smokes. The tenants, Marcia Rubio and Oscar Herrero, say they're happy with the arbitration award, but they would have preferred to stay in the townhouse, which is fair. Moving is a pretty big deal, which was close to their children's school and was $450 less in rent than where they are now, which is further away in Langley. They're feeling very frustrated, and it's crazy out there. Renting right now is crazy. It's incredibly competitive because people are having a really tough time qualifying for mortgages to purchase. So there was a realtor who was added as a co-purchaser after the initial offer and therefore isn't named in the residential tenancy board decision but told CBC News that they intend to appeal the decision. He said that he had warned the seller that their financing might not come together and that the seller should have let the tenants know. That's a little hard to navigate because what is the tenant supposed to do? Just wait to see if the deal completes and then either move out or don't move out? That puts the tenant in a little bit of a precarious spot. Tenants had moved out already. The offer on the townhouse, according to the residential tenancy branch, did not have any conditions on it, meaning the purchasers had to commit to the sale despite any financial or other concerns. They went condition free. They have to buy that home. The realtor said the housing market was so hot that those types of offers were de rigueur at the time. What does de rigueur mean? Required by etiquette or current fashion. But then the market turned, and despite his initial confidence in the ability to finance the mortgage along with a co-buyer, he wasn't able to make it happen. The deal collapsed at the 11th hour, and according to the realtor and the residential tenancy branch decision, and by then the tenants had already moved out. Yeah, what were they supposed to do, right? So Rubio said her son's birthday was at the end of the month and the family decided to move sooner in order to celebrate it, which is, of course, their right, and without the stress of an impending move. The decision says the onus to pay the fine is on the would-be buyer because they requested the landlord issue the 2-month notice to end tenancy. The landlord was just following the instructions that they would have agreed to in their contract as presented by the buyer. CBC News reached out to the seller, who was also the realtor and the landlord in the sale, but refused to comment, which is fine. I don't really think they did anything wrong in this case. Documents filed as part of the case that were shared with CBC show that the seller of that home, who was also a realtor, kept the $30,000 of a deposit and returned another $10,000 to the buyers after the sale was canceled. Now, they didn't have to return anything to the buyers. The buyers defaulted on the contract, and that $30,000 deposit is looked at as damages. So they really didn't have to return anything to anybody. You know, it's arguable that they are probably in a worse off shape because of what happened and not completing on the deal because of the fault of the purchasers. But anyways, that's another story. It goes on to say the townhouse was rented to new tenants. It was rented out shortly after the sale didn't go through. The decision, says the seller, told the arbitrator that he had to rent it again because with no sale, he still had to pay his mortgage, which, you know, I can understand. The tenants didn't know the sale had not gone through until a neighbor called to tell them that their former home had been rented to new tenants. When CBC contacted the realtor representing the buyers, a colleague at the realtor's realty group echoed the realtor's sentiments that the seller should have let the tenants know that if the deal fell apart, the buyer shouldn't be on the hook for the new tenant's compensation. There's nothing that was done wrong, they told CBC News. It's just really unfortunate what happened. I'm sure the buyer had full intention to complete on the property. They just weren't able to because it sounds like they couldn't get their financing. This was starting to happen a lot in the spring of 2022, but it's still not a good reason to not complete on a deal. You should not be writing condition-free offers unless you 100% have the ability to close on them. Ending the tenancy is a drastic step. Rubio says she and her husband, Oscar, had been renting the townhouse in Fleetwood since 2019. The residential tenancy branch decision notes that they were paying $2,300 per month for the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhome, which seems incredibly cheap. It goes on to say that the current tenants told CBC News they're actually now paying $2,900. Robert Pattison, a lawyer at the Tenant Resource and Advisory Center, says BC tenancy laws are pretty clear that if someone issues a notice to end tenancy and then doesn't follow through on that, there are consequences. Patterson said arbitrators at the residential tenancy branch do have discretion to make exceptions when there are extenuating circumstances, but the decision makes it clear the purchasers didn't adequately explain why their financing didn't come together. He goes on to quote, "Whenever we're talking about ending a tenancy, it's always a drastic step. It's always something that is going to have an incredible impact on the tenant. A person issuing an eviction notice or causing one to be issued needs to be very sure that they have adequate grounds to do so and needs to know that they can follow through on that stated purpose." For Rubio and her husband, who are now living farther away from their children's school and paying nearly $500 more in rent each month, the consequences are pretty clear. Tired of the insecurities of the rental market in Metro Vancouver, she says the family is planning to move to Alberta. Wow. So what a story that is. My question to you, and I would love you to leave your comments down below for this video, is was this situation avoidable? What could have been done to better protect the tenants? What could have been done to avoid the whole situation altogether? While you're down there as well, I'm going to link the 2 videos I mentioned earlier in this video about what I wish tenants knew about renting a property and what I wish landlords knew about renting a property. And I really implore you to watch those if you are a tenant or, interested in becoming a landlord, or maybe you are a landlord, because so many people get it wrong. Lastly, in the description below, you will find a link to our calendar. If you're someone that is considering buying or selling a home in the area that our real estate team services in Surrey, BC, please make use of the link and book a time to speak directly with us, and we'll give you all the information to help put you in a better place to make your real estate endeavors come true. Hey, look, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank you for subscribing, and we'll definitely look forward to seeing you on the next video. Until next time, cheers.